Welcome to the Silhouettes of Success podcast with your host, successful entrepreneur, broker, and business mentor, Amber Weitzer. Because success comes in all shapes, sizes, and styles, the Silhouettes of Success podcast is shining the light on industrious women with a collection of curated conversations of intentional inspiration designed to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, feed your soul, and gift you with actionable insights directly from inspirational, everyday women who've shown tenacity, grit, and grace, having taken on the challenges in their lives and business and won. Remarkable, down-to-earth, and relatable, Amber and her guests will share with you uplifting and extraordinary real-life success stories, motivational ideas that just might help spark something within you. With the deepest desire to serve you, help you grow so you can begin to shine the light that will illuminate your very own silhouette of success. So, let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success. Our VIP featured guest shares hope in healing through her works as a Christian-based motivational speaker, singer, and author of the recently published book, Fear Not, for You Are Redeemed. As a survivor of child sexual abuse and rape, she is passionate about sharing her hope in healing through Jesus. She is a trained advocate for sexual abuse survivors and knows how to communicate with women in a way that brings healing. Recently, I met her briefly and just knew she had a story to share. Silhouettes, please help me welcome Stefanie Jane. Hello, Stefanie.
Hello, Amber. Thank you for having me here today.
Oh, my lady, thank you for joining us. So, Stefanie, it's a joy to be with you today as you share your Silhouette of Success story. We touched a little bit about you in the intro, but there's a better way to help illustrate the shaping of your silhouette, and that is by having you share a little bit more about your background with our audience.
Yes. Well, as a survivor of sexual abuse, back in my teens, I really felt like I was the only person in the world that was dealing with this trauma. And sexual abuse isn't something a whole lot of people want to go around and have a conversation about. So trying to find healing within the community was a huge challenge for me. I really dove into the Word of God and really looked at what the Word had stated. And I looked at what my identity was in Christ. And because of Christ, I was able to be strengthened in His love. But again, the more I became involved with healing with the Lord, the more I just realized that, right, I'm not the only one. 25% of the women in the United States have been sexually abused. I can almost guarantee that you know somebody who's been affected by sexual abuse. And it's so traumatic that it affects a person from their mental state all the way down into their heart. And I think that it's imperative that we come together as a community and have those conversations. We keep things in the dark if we refuse to expose them and have conversation and allow Jesus to bring His light into that dark subject. So I really just, as time went on, became more and more involved with helping other women find their healing in Jesus. I'm an advocate for sexual assault survivors. I spend so much time in training. It's important to talk to survivors properly. It's important to minister to them properly. I don't want to hurt anybody more. I want to help them. So I've really educated myself a lot over the last 15 years. And in the midst of me helping women in the secular world, God was really calling me into ministry full time. And so this wasn't something that I just woke up one morning and said, I'm going to have a ministry and I'm going to help women in the church find their healing in Jesus Christ. That's not what happened. God gave me direction. God said, this is what you're going to do. He used my album. I released an album which walks listeners through my own healing a little over 10 years ago. And when I released that album, that's when my eyes were opened up to the need for the church to embrace survivors. There's a lot of sexual abuse that happens within the church. There's a lot of hurt that people have at the church. And that can distract people from healing within the church. So I work diligently to try to bring healing within the church and let girls know that, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, yeah, this happened to me, this hurt me, this did major things to me, but I'm going to accept that, and now I'm going to try to find my healing in Jesus Christ. So that's why I just strive to share my hope and healing, because I know that Jesus Christ can fully heal us when we turn to him and accept his healing.
Well, that's an exceptional journey that you've been on. And, sharing with the audience when the few short fleeting moments that we had our encounter, you absolutely had a glow about you, a happiness, maybe not happiness, but just an excitement and a peace about you. And I thought, well, you're instantly drawn in. And, it's interesting, you mentioned your music too. And that was something that I had further down, but we'll go into that right now. So your album, you released that around 10 years ago. And that was almost, if you will, helping you understand what your next steps would be. So are you a songwriter? Should we have included, songwriter
Yes.
in the intro? Do you write your own lyrics? Talk to us about your music.
Yes, the name of my album is See Me Change, and yes, I am a songwriter. My father was an amazing drummer. I grew up on stage, literally. If I could get on stage, I would be there. I used to do homework on stage because my dad was the drummer, so if we had a gig that night, we had a gig, but we still had homework to do.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up around that environment. I grew up around some of the most amazing names in the music business, but I also saw the evil that came with that. My dad died 14 years ago of a drug overdose. My sister and I often said that his number one love was his next high. And honestly, that's just so prevalent in the rock and roll music world. And I decided that I wasn't going to be a part of that world. I decided that I didn't know how to live a godly life and be a musician. So I walked away from music when my children were really young. And God's so funny because I'm sitting at my piano doing what I love to do, just singing my own song, playing my own music. And God literally tapped me on my shoulder and he's like, did I give you these talents to entertain yourself?
Oh.
Wow. I was pretty happy over here. I was okay with that, God. Like, why do you want me to do something that I just see so much evil in? But he says, that's not your story. Well, what do you want me to write about? And he's like, write about your healing. And I'm like, really? Like, that's not a light, fluffy subject. I have a hard time going out in public and talking about it. You want me to write about this? So he did. And I had some awesome musicians come alongside me here in the DFW. And we created just an amazing album. Every single song's a little bit different. So if you like Southern rock, if you like bluesy rock, if you like jazz rock, as long as you like rock, you're gonna love my album. But it really opened, after I released it, it opened doors that I never even considered walking through. And here I am. It's literally led me down a path to where I have such a desire to share my hope and healing. So I think when I released that album, there were just so many people that came up to me from so many different walks of life, and they had a story to tell. I've heard countless stories start, I've never told anybody this, but, and their story follows. I don't think that would have ever happened in my life had I not been vulnerable and released that album. And again, where I am today with what I do within the church, I would not get to hear those stories. And those stories, when people start by saying, I've never told anybody this, but they don't realize what freedom is about ready to take place when they have actually verbalized what had happened to them. Then they get into a place where they're like, oh, wow, there was freedom there. Well, wait a minute. There's so much more freedom for you when you move beyond just admitting it happened, and you can walk through the healing from that point on.
What an absolute goosebumps moment for you sitting at the piano that day, but a rewarding and golden opportunity for you to heal, but also, like you talk about, healing and helping through the stories and providing that space of vulnerability through the music and giving someone that comfort zone to approach you or to talk with you about that. What a gift for yourself, but that you give so many others. Wow. We mentioned early on, of course, I'm going to add, songwriter now, that you're a speaker and a singer and now published author. Congratulations on that.
Thank
Major.
You.
Yes.
Thank you.
What would you say would be maybe your most treasured accomplishments or successes within these roles? Or perhaps it's something we haven't even touched on yet.
Really, my biggest accomplishment to date is really this book, Fear Not, for You Are Redeemed. It's a 365-day devotional walking people through their healing with Jesus. I really believe that each and every one of us has fears that we need to face with God. It's one thing to say we're fearful about something happening. It's a whole different level when we go to the Lord and we say, you know what? These are my fears, Lord. God states that we are not to live in fear, but we're supposed to live in power and a sound mind, which comes through the Holy Spirit. So when we operate the way God intended for us to operate, then we can be courageous for Christ. But if we choose to let our fear just control our moments, control our thoughts, then we're not walking in the freedom and we're not walking in the will of God. And I hear all the time, well, what's the will of God? Well, open the Bible. It's pretty clear what the will of God is. The 10 Commandments is the will of God. Loving your neighbor is the will of God. Being vulnerable, being tender, that's the will of God in our lives. And everybody's going to demonstrate that in a different way. So each individual person has to come to the Lord and be vulnerable with God and say, well, this is my fear. God, why is this blocking me? What am I doing? And when we take our fears to the Lord, then He can show us what we're doing that might not be in line with His word. And He puts His truth, and His truth will cover our fear, and it will heal our wounds.
Wow, it's interesting as you are sharing, and I'm writing bullet points here to make sure I can capture some of the things to re-ask you about in all your amazing content. I'm looking around as I visualize everything, and on the bookshelf that I just stared at is the Holy Bible. I mean, it's it was my mom, so it's one of the big ones, and yep. I thought, okay, how could my eyes, so there's some of these things are just, and I always say goosebump moments. But there's no accidents, are there?
No, they're not. God has ordained each and every moment of every day, whether we like the moment or not.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Ay. Okay, Malay. So I'm going to press on in this second because no kidding. I was like, oh, all right. Okay. So I'll pull that off the shelf in a minute when we hang out. All right. Does not need to be on the shelf. It needs to be where I can touch it more, right? And read it.
Exactly.
As someone clearly who helps others, where do you turn when you need maybe inspiration or support?
Honestly, I'm a firm believer that all of us need counseling at one point in time in our lives. I think that that's very vital, especially if you're healing from deep wounds. Good godly counsel. Some counseling sessions are not necessarily the best. But I have a network of women that I love that are also in the sexual abuse healing world, and we get together on a very regular basis, and we kind of can debrief and we can laugh and we can just kind of unwind about what's going on in this world. Another thing is, it's vital as a writer with the Lord that I sit down and write things out with the Lord so that I can see. I'm just very black and white. I need to sit with the Lord and ask him a question, and I just send it right out the answer. God gave me that ability. I was in third grade when I started writing to the Lord, and it really is one of the most important tools for my sanity. Is to just constantly write out with the Lord what I'm going through and what he wants me to do within that.
And on that, when you talk about writing and the different things that you've accomplished along your journey so far, I say we're just really always just getting started. What could you share with our audience, maybe some positive adjustments perhaps that you've made in your life or environment to help support your growth goals and these, dreams that you're accomplishing?
My story is kind of interesting. I've been praying about this interview all week long, and really was asking God, what is it that's made me successful? What is it that has pushed me forward? How can I give listeners to this podcast advice on to keep moving? And for me, I found at a young age what God said I was good at, and I was able to hone my skills with the Lord. But it's always been an uphill battle for me. There's a lot of rejection in my line of work, and I had to come to a place where I said, you know what? I know who my identity in Christ is, and I know that God has called me to this place in life, and I'm going to get a lot of rejection, and I have to be okay with that rejection because I have to go through a whole lot of no's before I can get a yes. But I'm constantly having to go back to God and be certain this is what you want me to be doing, right? This is where you want me to be, correct? Because it's an uphill battle doing what I do, but I always have to go back to the source. I always have to make sure I'm in line with what God is having me do, because, like I said, with my album, it was not my dream to write an album. I was trying to run away from music. And then music brought me to a place where, oh my goodness, now I have to be vulnerable. And being an advocate for sexual assault survivors, that's a heavy thing to do. Somebody calls and goes to the hospital who's been a victim of rape that night. I've shown up at the hospital. I've gotten those phone calls in the middle of the night. So it can be draining. So I have to constantly go back to God and remember, okay, this is where you want me to be. But he's moved me through this process as I've gone up the hill. I've listened to the Lord. I have walked closely with his steps so that I'm in line with what he wants me to do. But most of what I've done in the last 15 years is only because God has led me there. I've never woken up in the middle of this and gone, oh, I'm going to run a ministry today. That wasn't a thing. But God said, no, that's going to be a thing. So I'm just constantly making sure that I'm in line with what he wants me to do. Because doing what I do, it's easy to waste time. And it's hard to make connections. So it's easy to get bogged down sometimes by the negative or the criticism. But God is always faithful and always brings people right alongside me at the moment where sometimes I'm just drained. And God says, okay, here's so-and-so. They're going to help you move to the next step. So it's really been a lot of people coming alongside God and listening. That's how my book ended up published. Donna Skill over at Roaring Lands Ministry is a dear friend of mine. And for years, like, Stefanie, you have such an amazing story. Your heart for God is just so amazing. You have to write a book. I had no idea in the world how Donna was going to expect me to write a book. Like, I have a dark story. I have no idea how I can get God glory out of that. But God said, no, don't worry. I've got your book, and you do have a story to tell, and it's going to be told in this manner. So, again, I just had the right people come alongside me to give me the encouragement to push me along at the right moment.
It's just even hearing you share that component is so hopeful for so many. You talked about checking in with God and checking in to stay in alignment. And then again, having him place those people to come in alongside of you is just quite hopeful in hearing that too. So it's interesting, as of course I look through different things and looked at your book and all these things. There's a beautiful butterfly theme throughout your branding. And talk to us about the symbolism.
Well, my life verse is 2 Corinthians 3:16, and that's where the butterfly really, really, that's where it comes from. I love the transformation that God does in my life, and because of that, the butterfly is such a beautiful representation of that. I'm actually going to read you my life verse, which is 2 Corinthians 3:16 through 18. Whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory are being transformed into his likeness with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. This, to me, is just every day I think about this verse. Every day I want my life to reflect the Lord's glory. And what does that look like for me? Well, that's me being sanctified in God. And when I'm being sanctified in God, I am walking out the glory of the Lord in that moment. And I think a lot of people get a little confused about the glory of the Lord. It seems so weighty. It seems so confusing to so many people. But I really love the analogy of just the butterfly and the bird. What did God do? He programmed them to specifically do things in this world. And they don't sit around and argue with God. Well, I don't really feel like eating the worms today, God, so I'm just going to sit up here and pout in my tree today. They don't do that. They go and they eat what God has designed for them to eat that day, and they're bringing God glory by doing exactly what God had designed them to do. So bringing God glory is simply stating that I am doing what God has designed me to do in that moment and in that day. And when we choose to walk with the Lord and bring God glory, then he's the one who transforms us. It's not so much me that's being the one that's, I'm not transforming myself. It's God who's transforming me, and I'm surrendering to what his call is for me in that moment.
Well, it's uplifting for sure to hear that. And thank you for sharing and elaborating on that, because again, you were painting such a beautiful visual. And then, sharing how we can embrace that even further with that. And it's beautiful. One of my favorite songs, and you said the word in waves. So it's funny. I meant to say that one of my favorite songs that I listened to of your album, quickly, I need to go back to the rest, of course, and download it, was the song Waves. It was so beautiful. I love the lyrics. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, milady. So we're going to take a quick break to hear from this episode's sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Is it time to sell your home? Build that dream home, right size? Or are you ready to invest in real estate? Couture Real Estate Firm is a local female-owned independent brokerage laser-focused on services exclusively tailored to our clients' real estate goals. With our forward-thinking business model, we have a fully mobile, luxury real estate concept allowing convenience, flexibility, efficiency for our clients in style. Amber Weitzer, broker-owner of Couture Real Estate Firm, has over 20 years in the real estate industry and is a second-generation broker. She provides straightforward business practices, integrity, and intelligence with a commitment to a high-touch, consistent customer service experience. We take great pride in our reputation as a strong, referral-based brokerage. Discretion, tenacity, respect, and proactive business practices have earned Couture Real Estate Firm a loyal, repeat client business with a trusted global partner network. We strive for ultimate client satisfaction with successful results, doing it with class, consciousness, and a little avant-garde. In addition to serving our clients and vendor partners, we are extremely honored to be actively engaged in supporting the communities we serve by promoting small businesses, schools, and nonprofits. Real estate is direct sales business at its core, and we are highly trained sales professionals with the Mike Ferry organization, adding dimension to the industry. Passionate about customer service, dedicated to client satisfaction, and driven to achieve successful results for our clients. Call Couture Real Estate Firm today at 817-233-7239 to discuss your real estate goals.
Okay, Stephanie, we're back. So we're going to kind of shift a little bit. The alarm goes off and your work or business or day begins. What does a day in the life look like for you as a author and songwriter and advocate and all of these wonderful things? Speaker. We didn't even touch on that yet. Share some of these, maybe your inside tips for our audience, because again, they're walking their paths. They might be in any one space that you have in your repertoire, if you will. Are you structured? Do you have a routine? Are you more of a spontaneous spirit? Talk to us about some of maybe your best practices to get some goals and dreams accomplished.
I, by natural, fleshly, whatever, am very spontaneous. I'm a huge free spirit. However, I've learned young in ministry, if I lived like that all the time, I would not get much accomplished. So I've had to train myself to, when the kids go to school, I do my work. But my work is so much outside of the house too. A lot of my work is on the weekends and in the evenings. So I have to do a lot of preparing during the day. I spend a lot of time behind my desk just writing. I blog a lot. I go to so many different meetings, meeting churches, meeting different organizations here in the DFW that minister to women who are sexually abused. So I try to do a couple of days a week where I'm out of my house and I'm meeting people and doing those types of networking things versus being behind my desk. Because if I don't structure my time, then my time gets wasted instead of being used wisely. So really have to be careful with my time.
That makes
I could write for hours. Nothing else will get done.
That's right. You get that flow and it's like, wait, what time is it? Where did that just all go? But sometimes don't you feel that it's the time and it's no matter, and the time does fly, but it's there and it was put there. God put it there and you've got to just get it all out because it is just naturally flowing.
Well, certainly when I was in the hard place of writing my book every single day, that's almost all that mattered. Thank God all the editing landed during COVID because that was a lot of work and I didn't have anywhere else to go anyway. So that was kind of nice. It really, I think God's sense of humor just kind of played out with COVID in me because he's like, oh, look at that, you can't go anywhere. So now you really have to finish this editing. So, yes, I can definitely sit down and start writing, and the whole world will go black, and it's just me in that moment writing. But I also know on the other side of that, I have many other hats to wear, so I have to make sure I balance my time all the way around so that everything gets done.
Yeah. There's the magic right there. Try sometimes the balance, the imbalance of balance. So, so quick question too. We all crave great resources that help inspire, uplift, expand our minds. So, alongside your book, of course, which we will be sharing your contact information and the links in the resource section. But do you have any other influencers, or, I say mentors, and then sometimes people say no influencers. I'm like, well, but do you have any authors or anything else you'd want to share, resources with our audience that might be something that would help inspire them?
Really, like as a woman, I go to the professional women's luncheons. I'm involved with a couple of different speaking groups here, and going to the meetings, getting involved with, I live in the town of Allen, so going to the monthly meetings for businesses, just really kind of putting myself in places that I wouldn't say I feel out of place, but there's some times where I'm just like, why am I at another one of these boring lunches? Well, I'll tell you why. I met somebody, and that person encouraged me, and that person. So for me, to some extent, like especially, being in the ministry world, sometimes it can seem almost silly to be in places now that are for secular businesses. But God can work in so many different places. My dad used to always say that 98% of everything is just showing up. And there's so much to be said about showing up and just being vulnerable and being honest. And so I've learned places that I can go to that might not, they're kind of out of the box, if you will. And that's where oftentimes I get filled up in those out of the box kind of places. And just learning about how other people do things is so vital. Running a business can be so complex. And somebody else might have gone ahead of you, and they've done that. They've tried things that did and didn't work. And so being vulnerable in those places and say, well, I'm trying to do this right now and it's not really working. And then somebody else says, well, this worked great for me. Might not work for you, but this is what worked for me. So it's important to almost find those uncomfortable places to be, so that you can learn to get out of your comfort zone and make connections with people that just are so outside of your realm that you would not have met them unless you allowed yourself to be slightly uncomfortable in those types of situations.
That's fantastic. Great points. Expanding a little bit about the showing up and the advice that your dad shared with you, and, any advice that others have given, but how about letting you share a piece of intentional inspiration with our audience? So with that said, would you have a piece of key go-to advice that you'd like to pass on with us?
My advice is fun. My biggest advice is change rock. I think so many people, it's a fun thing. That became my motto when I released my album, Change Rock. I think so many people get stuck into the whole fear of change that they forget that change is fun. Change is great. Change means growth. There's most of the time when we choose to be vulnerable and change, then we allow wonderful things to come and flow into our lives that we would not have had in our life if we were stuck in an old pattern. So, and it kind of comes alongside my whole fear not free or redeemed, because when we choose to let change happen in our lives, then we begin to recognize the things that we're fearful of, and then we can work through those things with God, and then we can find the fun in changing.
I find that splendid. I love that. That is amazing. Okay, milady, in respecting your time, I'm watching the clock here, but I want to give you the floor. Where can our audience go to find and connect with you, whether it be on your socials or anything else you'd like to share to support you in your continued success?
Awesome. Well, I can always be found at StefanieJane.com, and my name is spelled slightly different. It is with an F, Stefaniejane.com. You can find me literally on every platform from Facebook to Instagram, everything with the Stefanie Jane. And if you're ever here in the Dallas area, you can go to my website and see what events where I'm speaking at, and you can come see me in person.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, we will share those links in the resource section of the notes of the podcast. Stefanie, thank you once again for sharing a portion of your Silhouette of Success story with us. You have been a true inspiration to me and to us, and a champion of, I would say champion of women, but champion of humans.
Thank you.
So thank you for everything. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Silhouettes of Success podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out, and join us for all the new episodes. We are here for you and with you. We encourage you to share this podcast on all your socials and pass on the light to help illuminate another Silhouette of Success. Amber would love to hear from you, and you can find her on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or head over to amberweitzer.com. Let's connect. Help us all shine and leave us a review too. To find out the latest ways to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, and gain actionable insights, subscribe at amberweitzer.com. We are honored, humbled, and full of joy that you've tuned in. Remember, you are exactly where you need to be, right here with us. This is the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success.